All right, we are recording. Welcome to the At the Buzzer podcast on the Mo Money Sports Network, the sports network for the sports fan. I'm Mo Money. This is my new co-host G for the debut edition of the At the Buzzer podcast. How you doing, G?
Doing pretty darn well, thanks, man. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Actually, you're the first cohort on the Mo Money Sports Network. This is exciting for me. We're going to get into all things basketball on this podcast. So if you enjoy that, drop a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'm the worst self promoter in the world, but let's get into this. Team Canada shocking the world by winning bronze at the FIBA World Cup. What are your impressions of not only the team, but its image going forward to 2024 and France in the Olympics?
Ownership over being a cynical person maybe a year ago when it came to the Canadian team and stuff. People were getting excited, and I was like, you're pumping, your expectations are going way too high based on everything that we've seen with the Canadian program. They can't compete. And I was like poo-pooing it, I didn't think guys were going to play. I didn't think Jamal would even do a practice with them, but he was, he at least showed up to training camp and stuff. But like, I was completely wrong. So I couldn't have been further, I think, from expectations to what actually happened. And I'll own that.
Well, even going into that game against France, we were underdogs in that game. They expected France to beat us, and they thought we were going to have a tough time qualifying. So when they kind of beat France by 30 or whatever it was, they kind of shocked everybody.
That was the cue where it was like, oh, okay, somebody took it seriously here, and it's going to show. And man, when they lost that game, was it Latvia or Lithuania? Get them confused.
Beat who? Which game are you referring to?
Canada in the early rounds.
Oh, we went undefeated 3-0 in the first round, but we lost to Brazil in the second round.
Okay. Maybe it was in the prelims or something, but yeah, I just wasn't sure. And then I saw them actually play, and I saw Shea take over the game, and it was like, oh, we got a superstar now, kind of like when Steve Nash played. There's a bit of a spirit behind that, and I was impressed.
Well, the one thing I will lament about Canadian basketball in general is not the fact that we have a superstar in Shea Gilchrist Alexander, which we do, but it's that our other stars are unwilling to play, and that leads into the cynicism that you were talking about earlier. It's not that we don't have the talent to play with the rest of the world. It's the talent that we do have doesn't want to play against the rest of the world.
Yeah, and there's the aspect of a lot of the guys now are playing most of their high school ball in the States, right? So there's a disconnect that can happen with them wanting to play for a country that they don't have as deep of an attachment to. But I think that's changed. I think they're seeing it now as an avenue for proving ground. Like Dylan Brooks is a perfect example. Like, go show the world what is up.
I love Dylan Brooks. He's not everybody's cup of tea. I'll be the first to admit it. He's not really my cup of tea if he's playing for my team either. But he's got that dog in him, and I'll give him this much credit. Whether he's up 20 or down 20, you get the same Dylan Brooks every night.
Man, 100%. And he's that guy, like you said, you don't want to play against him. Like, he's not necessarily going to drop 50, but he's the guy that's like, oh, man, I have to play him again. He's just mean and rough and just ruthless, and that's cool to see on the world scale. That really changed the game for Canada.
Yeah, it's Dylan Brooks. For all his flaws, he can ride with me any day of the week, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, his game's not perfect, but every team needs a dog like that.
Would you have said that before seeing him in the World Cup here?
I might have, but I would also caveat that with saying I would have put a leash on his talking. His talking is what, like, if Dylan Brooks could just play the game, he'd be more respected by the NBA community. But his mouth sometimes writes checks that he can't cash, and that puts him in a bad spot in the eyes of the public. As I said, you get the same Dylan Brooks every night. So I'll
Hmm.
take that because if I know what I'm getting, then I know what I can count on.
Exactly. And every story needs a villain, right? Like it makes for good. It's a tool. Like it's fun and stuff. It's entertaining, but it's also a tool of, like you're saying, sort of the mental aspect of the game that can wear on players like Luca and guys like that have big mouths too. And then it's like, oh, you met your match, and now it's attrition, and one of them is a bit more of a
Yeah.
dog, and you could see,
And I got to tell you, I was happy just to qualify for the Olympics when we qualified, and then on top of that, we beat Slovenia, I believe it was, and Luca, and that makes me happy because my little brother is a Dallas Maverick fan,
Oh no,
and Luca's his guy. So anytime I can kind of stick it to Luca, whether it be international or NBA play, I'll take it.
this is going to end up
It's
being a bashing Luca podcast because I got no love, no
no,
real
no.
love
I
for him
love
there.
no, I love Luca and the
I
way
don't
he
know if
can
I do.
play. But I will also say that as long as he's wearing a Mavericks jersey, I hope he doesn't win a title. I can say that.
Man, as long as he keeps just the constant, like it's unbearable to watch the constant yapping at the refs and stuff. Like there's a balance between the greats and yapping and stuff, but like, man, I don't know why it grinds my gears to the point of being annoyed, but I try not to let it get to me.
That's my question because I'm going to bring it back to Dylan Brooks here for a minute. What's the difference between Luca doing it and Dylan doing it? Because Dylan doesn't have the talent to back up what he's saying,
True.
but he somehow gets a pass, whereas Luca's a superstar, and you're like, I just wish he could stop yapping. So, what is the difference between a Dylan Brooks who doesn't have? Is it mentality? Is that what you see as the difference between the two of them?
Yeah, a little bit of the mentality, but also where it's directed. Like one feels like it's conscious sort of choice. Like in Dylan Brooks, like he's going to use it to get under Luca's skin, and he's going to use it to get under people's skin. Where I find a lot of Luca's talking is just directly to the refs and directly to like the FIBA, like commissioners and stuff. And he's going like
Yeah,
this, and it's just like, dude, suck it up and play
just
the
play the
game.
game.
Play the game.
Yeah,
If
just
you're
play
going to
the
trash
game.
talk, that's one thing. Constant complaining is like a kid behavior where I'm just like, oof, yeah, he's not going to grow out of that. And I see that being a major hindrance in the way that it's not a tool. It's like it's a thing that works against him.
And is it also here's another theory I have. Is it also easier to ignore Dylan Brooks because he's not as much of a star?
Yeah, less impact, less sort of drives to the net and touches and things like that. So you're not going to see him taking 25 shots and going to the line 13 times a night or whatever. So between the fouls he does get and then the fouls that, Luca's always got the ball in his hands. So there is that aspect. That's true.
Well, we beat Slovenia anyway, so good for
Yeah.
us. And we finished third. We won the bronze medal. And that leads me into my next point of LeBron waking up the very next day and saying, I'm going to Paris.
Because the
So
Americans got embarrassed.
the Americans got embarrassed, and LeBron's not happy about it.
No.
So now, I mentioned this before we hit the button, but I'm going to bring it up here as well. Did we awake the sleeping giant in the Americans
What do
by
you
defeating
think?
them in that bronze medal game? I don't know. When the best player of his generation gets off his couch because we beat them, I think we. But this is what we want, right? This is the challenge we want. We want the Americans. We want to see where we measure up. So if
Mhm.
we did wake up that beast, I'm happy about it because that's our measuring stick. That's where we want to be.
Let me ask you this, though. Do you think the beast can be awoken in the sense that we're looking at an NBA season where he's going to play what, 50, 60 games?
65 maybe.
Let's say they make a playoff run. That's a long season for a body that's 1 year older than last year, where literally every time he touched the ball, Doris Burke would be like, I can't believe it at 38 years old. Because it's beyond belief, right? So I'm
it,
curious.
it is beyond belief. I'm a Laker fan. So that playoff run you're talking about, I'm hoping for. Not
Yeah.
for Team Canada basketball, but because I bleed purple and gold when it comes to the NBA. Magic was my guy.
See, I respect
So
Magic era Lakers. I respect Kobe era Lakers. Around that, it's tough. It's tough.
hey, I rooted for us when we had Smush Parker on our team, so you can't question my loyalty. And for those of you who don't know who Smush Parker is, there's a good reason for that.
Yeah. Hey, I respect diehard fans. I will. And I'm coming into dark days being a Raptors fan, so I know what it's
Well,
like.
well, see, that's another problem that I have is I've got the Raptors on the Canadian side of the border.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what happens if it comes down to a Laker Raptor final? Then what do I do?
You got to go with your heart, and it probably is purple and gold, right? Like it transcends the national identity in the NBA because it's about teams in the NBA. It's not about countries so much, right?
That's true. So I would probably be rooting for the Lakers, but
That's the
it
most
wouldn't
loyal
bring
thing you could do, right? Like if you're going to be
it,
loyal, be loyal.
if I'm gonna be, I gotta be loyal. That's right. Because Magic, like I just said, Magic was my guy. So
Yeah, Magic
growing up in the
was.
late '80s, early '90s, Magic was my guy.
Man, what do you
So
think of this talk of Steph being the best point guard of all time? And
wrong,
yeah, I think that was a
wrong.
random.
Not even close. And whoever said that hasn't been watching basketball long enough.
Yeah, I think it was ESPN, some like, the just filling the hours thing where they had to put up something, right? And
ESPN is comical.
I know.
ESPN used to be the worldwide leader in sports,
Hmm,
right? And
yeah,
I say used to be because now, not to get off track too far here, but you have people like Pat McAfee who run a very successful show, and ESPN went out and got him. So I really doubt that ESPN is the worldwide leader in sports anymore when a podcast like this can do just as good a numbers on YouTube as they do on ESPN. So, with all due
mhm.
respect to the opinions of ESPN and their analysts, Steph is not the greatest point guard in the NBA,
No.
especially of all time. I would have to say it's John Stockton. John Stockton gets my vote. That's where I'm going with it.
As strange as that guy is, yeah, I remember him growing up as being the most legendary point guard. But Steve Nash, I grew up with too at the age of like 13 when Steve Nash was in his prime. So it was like,
The back-to-back
man,
MVP, Steve Nash.
that was beyond belief, right? Like that was just truly beyond belief that some freaking guy from a small town in Victoria was able to transcend, yeah, the greatest.
Now, now, see, Steve Nash isn't even my favorite point guard because I just told you Magic was my guy. So if
Yeah,
Magic's my favorite and Stockton's the best, Nash has got to be in the top five because there were series that he should have won that were taken from him due to officiating, but I'm not going to get into that.
no
I'm
doubt.
just going to let you know that I keep receipts as far as the teams that are playing go.
People don't forget, right? People don't forget, especially when oh man,
No,
a couple of those series were just criminal. LeBron, I think he's got it in him. I think he's just that guy, right? He's that guy, man. He could do both. Like if he pulls that off, would that be the greatest sports achievement of all time if he won an NBA championship at his age and then a gold medal?
I would agree that it probably would be, and it would bring him closer to Michael. I still give the edge to Michael,
Yeah.
despite what most of the young ones think. But he's at least, I tell you, he's the number 2 or 3 on my list of greatest of all time, LeBron James. As
Yeah.
much as the haterade as I drink, I gotta give the guy his respect. He's
Mm.
one of the greatest we've ever seen, and the NBA will miss him. Myself included. I want this on video so everybody hears me say it. Everybody's gonna miss LeBron when he retires.
Yeah. Yeah. Truly. He brings a level of competitiveness that isn't seen among many players, like when he got that foul or non-foul called on him when Tatum is just screaming. Like, man, that's somebody that cares, right?
Yeah, it's just one of those things. Like my biggest criticism of LeBron, if there can be a nitpick of LeBron's game, is he doesn't want to be that dude. You said he is that dude. But when it comes to that fourth quarter crunch time shot, he doesn't seem to want that spotlight on him. And now he can
Anymore.
justify it, but he can justify it by saying, I made the correct basketball play. But when you're the best player in the league, the best basketball play is you taking the shot. I'm sorry. That's just how I think. If you're the best player, you're our best option. You take the shot.
This actually brings up an interesting problem I see across the NBA, well, maybe not some of the national teams, but when you've got two out in a sense, like, and it hasn't been negotiated clearly who's Batman and who's Robin, you have a clash that happens like with the Luca Kyrie thing. Nobody knew who to shoot it in the end because they're both transcendent last shot of the quarter guys. I remember that one play, they both literally looked at each other as
They
time
ran
ran
out
out.
of time.
It's like, man, that brutal.
Here's how I do it. Here's how I divvy that up in my head.
Yeah.
If it's your house I'm coming to, you take the last shot. That's how
That's
I.
not
That's how
Kyrie,
I.
though.
But Kyrie didn't put up the shot. And he didn't leave time for Luca to put up the shot. I know the game you're talking about. I watched that game because I
Yeah.
have NBA League Pass because I love the game so much.
Yeah. I love being able to turn on any game. And Mavs were particularly entertaining to watch at the end of last season, but we'll leave that for another day.
Oh yeah, that might be our 2022 year in review show before we get the primer for the 2020 season previews.
Man.
But Luca, and the Mavs are always fun to watch.
So to finish up on the World Cup stuff too, what is your biggest takeaway?
My biggest takeaways is Canada has a lot of players that are underrated, and here's another takeaway just in general that I've noticed is that the FIBA style of basketball suits some players better than the NBA style of basketball.
Which one stood out to you most?
Number one was Kelly Olynyk. He had games. Powell showed me things that he was capable of that I didn't see coming. There were a few international players as well who just adapted to the FIBA rules better than they do in the NBA.
Yeah, and they are distinctly different, right? Where there's just a level of flow that gets disrupted between the two different styles, right? The margins.
And the other thing I noticed about the World Cup was the hits to the head were taken a lot more seriously than they do in the NBA. Because in the NBA, you get called for intent, unnecessarily a hit to the head. In FIBA, it doesn't really matter. You hit him, it's a technical free throw.
Yeah, because I think in the NBA, a lot of guys get away with hits to the head if they're like a superstar or whatever. And it's like, well, Giannis didn't mean it. And then, somebody like OG might do it and they're like, get him out of the game. This guy's a freaking, he was trying to take his head off. And it's like, they look pretty similar, but okay.
Yeah, I see how it works. But I watch the Raptors a lot too because, I'm Canadian and I watch the Raptors on TSN and Sportsnet. So for me, I'm very adept to Raptors basketball too. But I didn't want to just make this a Raptors basketball podcast. I would much rather cover the league as a whole. And we batted around a few names and we landed on at the buzzers. This is where we are.
And yeah, I heard the Philippines was a basketball crazy country that, really were able to make that an exciting tournament for a lot of those players. And maybe you see guys like Kelly Olynyk and Brooks really take that stage because it's like a unique opportunity that they might not see that many people in their markets and stuff.
And shout out to Lou Dort as well, who had an amazing tournament. I'm going to take a minute here to give him his flowers because he really stepped up. And, going into the tournament, I didn't really know much about Lou Dort other than he was in Oklahoma City. This could be a coming out party. And as far as the Oklahoma City Thunder are concerned, I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs, but they're going to be fun to watch.
You know what? They are one of my teams to watch without getting into those previews yet, but they're one, man. And I don't know if they'll still be in Oklahoma City in 2 years. I feel like if a team's going to move it, they're probably one of them. But man,
I don't know, man. I'm gonna give a shout out to them Thunder fans. They love their basketball in Oklahoma.
Heck yeah. They got an interesting
you
team.
Just never know, right?
Yeah, money plays funny games with the league, but yeah, they got an interesting team that makes it watchable now. Of like Shea, Chet will be coming back. Dort.
Well, I hope Chet gets blocked out of the gym on his first drive to the hoop. I hope he gets blocked out of his gym because Chet is one of those guys who had one great preseason game. And he's like, I'm here. And he didn't even make it to his first NBA game before he snapped his ankle. So
I would have put money on that when I first saw that guy. I was like, he's not going to last a game. Didn't last a game. And I think they probably just took him out for a year, almost like redshirt it. Like he probably could have come back after a month, but they're like, dude, we're just going to put weight on you and work out for a year. Because
we're gonna give you another year. You're not ready for this yet.
yeah.
But no, and props to Germany as well for winning the FIBA World Cup. Those games were on too early for me. I'm not
Mm,
getting up at 1:30 in the morning to watch a basketball game unless I have the day off, which I didn't. I
mm.
wasn't getting up at 1:30 when I got to work at, in the morning. So,
No, not unless you're already still up. That's a little late. There's some good things about those international games and stuff. It makes it like a fun event that way, but it's nice to be back on the regular schedules of things. And man, do I like
oh
getting
yeah.
time zones in the West where you get the early games at
Gi-
4:30 and
Give, give me the 4 o'clock and 7 o'clock games all day long, dude.
oh, it's such a nice thing, man. I was able to organize my days around that stuff. It's like you said, it's so much good basketball, the league pass, the storylines that aren't really talked about. There's just so much interesting pieces there. ESPN jokers and stuff can't get to because they're such a one-sided business, and yeah, these podcasts can exist to explore the
ESPN
other.
has changed so much over the years. Like I have mad respect for like Stuart Scott, the late great Stuart Scott,
Mm.
and so many of the old heads at ESPN.
Michael
Like
Wilbon.
Michael Ray Wilbon, Tony Kornheiser. Shout out
Mm.
to PTI. I don't know if this is going to end up being like a PTI type podcast, but
Mm.
all that being said, ESPN's changed way too much, and they got to get back to sports, dude.
Mm. That's it. It's the
That's
pandering
where
to what they. Yeah, I think that's the core of what people show up for. If you get too far from what your core product is, you're going to lose people in your core audience.
Like for me, I live stream NBA games here on the channel. I turn the volume down and I do commentary myself. It's not good
Interesting.
commentary, but I just hang out with people. But it's because I
Yeah.
love the game, dude, and that's the whole purpose of this channel and this
Mm.
podcast is
Yeah.
just to hang out with somebody and talk basketball.
Yeah. Do you have some sleepers that you're going to be like excited to flip to on those league pass nights where it's a weird nothing game, quote unquote, but one you'd be like, oh, I'm interested to see Houston play. See some.
Well, I am interested in Houston, but not because I think they're going to be good. I'm interested because I like Freddie Van Fleet,
He's a real
and
one.
and I'm rooting for Freddie. And contrary to most Raptor fans, I'm happy that Freddie got his money.
Same.
I'm
Same.
also happy the Raptors didn't give it to him.
Same.
But at the same time, I'm happy for you, Freddie. If you somehow stumble across this, I'm rooting for you out there in Houston.
Yeah.
A couple of sleepers. I want to watch more Oklahoma City because of Lou Dort. I think they're going to be fun to watch. I'm always that, as much as I'm a Laker fan, I'm a diehard Laker fan. But I always root for teams like Minnesota, those teams that are at the bottom of the league. I
Mhm.
want to see those teams come. I want change in the NBA because so often what happens is you get 3 or 4 good, solid teams that can win a title, and then you're just waiting until late May, early June to see which one of them wins. So I'm always rooting for that next up and coming team in the
Mm.
NBA, if that makes any sense.
Makes a lot of sense, actually. And kind of one of my biggest questions, actually, is like, what does it take for a team like that to get to the top? And maybe Denver's a good example that they weren't really bottom feeders at it for a long time, though, but they're not a big market. They were never really top dogs. They've been in it for a while, but that's an open-ended question. Just like, what does it take for a Minnesota or a Detroit or somebody to get
Or
out
a
of
Portland.
purgatory, to actually get out of purgatory without having a 1 in a billion player like Giannis or something like that,
You know what? I think it's important that players like Dame stay. It's important, like that Carl Anthony Towns stays.
Hmm.
I think Minnesota made one of the worst trades going out and getting Rudy Gobert.
Mind
That's
blow.
because when Kevin Durant was being traded, they're like, we want more than that. And I was like, who's going to be stupid enough to give you more than that?
A
That
Minnesota
doesn't,
ring.
doesn't it
It
doesn't
almost,
seem to make a lot of sense, dude.
I think it was like almost a spite, like some sort of like business thing must have been going on, and maybe the management was getting fired or leaving. And they're like, oh, by the way, on our way out, meet your newest player, Rudy Gobert.
And I
Some
like
sort of
Rudy.
like,
He doesn't fit in Minnesota.
no, he's a big, unique piece that I think is again a little big for his britches in the sense that like you're not the guy on the team and you're not so good that you can be that much of a distraction in terms of attitude and consistency, right? Like it's like, dude, you're not a diva, you're not on that level. And
A team out east I'm interested in too is Atlanta
interesting.
because they got a new coach. They're trying to. I don't know what the deal with Trey is.
It's the same thing
I
as the
I
Luka, different problem but similar, where it's like,
I agree. Atlanta's either going to be one of those situations that's going to end up being really great and they're going to go on a playoff run, or it's going to be an absolute train wreck. And I'm here for it either way.
which one's got your initial instinct or vote if you had to pick?
If I had to pick one, I'd say train wreck. I just think the chemistry in Atlanta's off. I don't think having a new coach helped. I just think there needs to be a shakeup in Atlanta. They seem like they've had the same team for like 4 years. And I know
Mhm.
pieces have come in and out of there, but the vibe hasn't changed in Atlanta in like 5 years. So there needs to be a shakeup.
Yeah, it's the Trey Young factor, right? He's such a big attention thing that if he's not the best player and everybody's sort of working well with him, it's a train wreck, right? Because he's the guy. It's almost like, if your guy is mentally not mature and is coming into the league as a kid, has so much money and clout that he can stay a kid. I think we're seeing an epidemic right now. If you look at the NBA's top prospects, Luka, Ja, Zion, Trey Young, all transcendent potential, all kind of hitting a
Wall.
top. Yeah, and it's to do with attitude and maturity. I really believe it. They get so much money so quick. They don't have mentors. They don't have adults around. Show me otherwise, right? Because all the evidence says that.
And it's just one of those things like but you don't find those mentors anymore. Like there isn't the Charles Oakley anymore. There isn't, that guy on the bench. There isn't that Horace Grant to help you
Mhm.
along in the league anymore.
And look how it's
Those
working out
guys are
for 'em.
gone.
Yeah, man. I think that's a missing piece, to be honest. That's why Miami kept, what's that dude's name, on the bench forever. He's like the OG type of
You
dude.
don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had the best
I
technical foul I've ever seen this year. Did you see that one? Where he just
I didn't.
whispered
I missed
something?
that.
He came in off the bench because he's still in his thing and just whispered something in, I think it was Bobby Portis's ear in a playoff game, and wasn't supposed to
Yeah.
come off the bench. Ref teed him up, but you should have seen Bobby Portis. Like he couldn't hit a shot after and just was ice cold. Just like, what did he say to him?
What could you say? What was there? Your mama joke that we all missed, or what?
Udonis is a scary dude. I think that's all that was. It's just like if he's whispering something mean in your ear, it's like, yeah, probably mess you up.
We've seen playful things like Scottie Pippen telling Carl Malone the mailman doesn't deliver on Sundays. We've seen playful things like that work. But
Mm-hmm.
what could you, Adonis Haslam, have said to spark that
Seriously.
kind of reaction?
It was disruptive. It like changed the whole tone of where the game was going and stuff. And that's again a mentor move where they have enough investment in having a guy can understand why maturity is valuable in those moments and things like that. Because it's those little things that can make the difference. Miami shouldn't have been in the Eastern Conference Final.
No, and my brother's gonna live off that forever. My older brother,
It's the maturity.
he's been chirping me all summer about that.
Yeah, and they got lucky in some sense, but if you compare them to the Celtics, it's the only difference is maturity in terms of what would give them the edge. Like,
Well, Jimmy Buckets is that guy too.
oh, is he ever? Skill wise, Tatum has the same bag of tricks. It's just this attitude of you're not the guy, Tatum. I don't
No,
know how
because
you feel about
Tatum.
Tatum, but he's not going to be.
Well, he should be a Laker. He should be a Laker, but we drafted Lonzo. But that's another story for another time. Tatum looks on a Sunday afternoon. Just wanted to play a pickup game of basketball. That's what Jason Tatum looks like.
All the time. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's
I
fine.
mean,
If that's who you are, that's great. But I wouldn't build my franchise around you.
and what I mean by that is no disrespect. It's just he looks too casual, is what I'm trying to say when he's out there on the court.
Big time. Doesn't seem like he cares really much of the time, like 90%. Just so chill, like he's golfing. Like he's got a golfing attitude.
Like he can put up the numbers, sure, but it's not about numbers in the NBA.
It's about winning, right? It's about actually winning and demonstrating that. So I think, I don't know, maturity factor of a team like the Nuggets, you can see it paying off, right? I can just
Yes, and they stuck together too. Denver stuck by their guys, and Milwaukee kind of stuck by their guys. And you notice those teams that grow together, that could be part of the winning formula going forward.
I sure hope so, because it's a lot funner to watch those guys succeed than seeing people just slap together teams and try to like outlast each other through who's able to sit the most games and who can avoid the most injuries. It's like
Load
nobody
management
wants to see that. Nobody cares
load
about
management is the worst. Load management is the worst thing to ever happen to the NBA. I'm sorry, that's just how I feel. Load management is the worst thing to ever happen to the NBA. Kobe didn't take a night off. Michael didn't take a night off. Barkley played every night.
Yeah.
Bird gave us everything he had for a decade. And you can call me an old head all you want to. I'm sticking by my opinion. Load management is the worst thing to ever happen to the NBA.
And again, I think it comes down to the money of the players being able to exercise. I don't know what you want to call it, but like impositions on the league of how they want it to be done, that the league still wants to make theirs. And you have two forces that can't meet anywhere but at each other's faces. It's very unfortunate.
Here's my solution. Shorten the season.
Thank you. Yeah. But the NBA is going, no. But they don't understand the value of the product being diminished so much by this load management thing that it's like, man, you're going to lose more money in the end, I think, than by shortening the season.
I would rather a 70-game season where everybody plays every night and the days off are spread out. Maybe you get occasionally 2 days off between games or whatever, and everybody plays and you get 12 games off, rather than you just taking a random 12 games off because you're playing the Charlotte Hornets on a given Tuesday.
Right? And just the poor fans that spent all their money for that one game. Hopefully they're playing tonight. And it's like, no, they decided, they flipped a coin and Paul George got, he got tired.
Speaking of paying a lot of money for one game, you being out in the city, did you manage to score tickets to that Raptor game in October?
No, they were like Taylor Swift tickets. They were literally gone, sitting there at the time of, admission and stuff, and couldn't get them. So it was like, all right, maybe a trip to Portland is going to be cheaper anyway.
Maybe a trip to Portland. Hey, you know what? Pick me up on the way.
Man, seriously.
We'll do a live at the Buzzer podcast from Portland at the what do they call it? The Coda Arena, I think they call it, or something like that.
Think so, but yeah, the tickets for the Trailblazers are very, very, like, especially upper deck stuff. You can get like under $30 for like mid-court upper seats.
Well, see, I'm in a chair, so it's either floor or upper deck. There's no in between for me.
I like that. I kind of like that too, just in terms of money. Like, either you're going in hard, this is your game, you're going to be on the goddamn floor. You're just chilling and you're up, able to take it all in.
And look, if we're going to Portland, I'm going hard and I'm going on the floor.
Man, I was looking at what the floor seats were going for, and it was, depending on the game, depending on the time, it depends. But yeah, there's.
What do you think? Should we try that one time? Go down, catch a game, and do a live at the Buzzer podcast for the YouTube family.
I think so. I think it would be in everybody's interest.
I think so.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
I know we're recording this first one, but live podcasting is fun.
Yeah, and Portland's plays for it. They're one team I don't see making much noise this year, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with Lillard. Like, what a brutal sort of turn of events for him to sort of hold out so long and now be sort of left holding the potato in a sense. He's kind of stuck.
But he planted the potato.
Exactly.
This is where I have no.
He took the money.
This is where I have no sympathy for Dame. You planted the potato. You can't now be upset that you're holding the potato. That's my point.
That's so true.
I'm sorry you triggered me with this. I felt the same way about Kevin Durant in Brooklyn.
Exactly.
I don't get
Harden, same thing. You took the thing.
You planted the potato.
Yeah.
You're not holding the potato. Look, if you still have 4 years on your contract, I don't have to accommodate you. I'm sorry, G, you hit a trigger on that one. I'm going to try to calm down here.
I'll sum it up with this great quote I heard once. You can't take the effect and make it the cause, right? You can't take you being stuck in no man's land and say that's, the source of your problems and stuff when it's you that freaking are actually the cause. Like, you can't get mad at the effect. You can't be there's a lot of ways to put that, but it's a very wanting to have your cake experience, I think, that he's demonstrating to the world. And I can feel sympathy because he's a good guy, but he's not.
No, I don't feel sympathy. I'm sorry. You signed the deal. You're getting $145 million or whatever the number happens to be.
Yeah.
I feel very, very little sympathy for somebody who's getting $150 million, whatever the case may be. And I'm sure in the comments somebody's going to be like, it's $230 million or whatever.
And that's going to be nothing in 2 years because there's big money coming.
In the comments of this podcast, people will be laughing at me because I got the number wrong, not knowing that I'm just trying to make a point.
Yeah. And that's everybody's argument too of like, well, everybody's going to be making so much money. It's like, these big numbers aren't anything to, freak out about and stuff. But man, if your player is just going to be choosing not to play somewhere, like he put out that statement saying he wouldn't play for a team that traded for him. It's like, well, now you get like zero or maybe less than zero sympathy is due for you because now you're just being ignorant at that point, I think. But we don't need to go too far on Dame. It's
no, but I will just wrap this up by saying this: Dame, you were the most loved guy in the NBA, and if you're watching this podcast, listen up, because Dame, you were the most loved guy in the NBA because you were loyal to a city. Not only the city fell in love with you, but the NBA fan base as a whole fell in love with you because we were like, that's our guy. We hope he wins. Blah, blah, blah. All the success in the world.
Underdogs.
And you turned on us on a dime. And now we're sitting here holding the bag like we vouched for you. But when you're being a baby about it and we vouched for you for being a loyal guy, you're making the entire league look bad. You're making the fan base look bad. I'm sorry, this is my rant for the podcast. Damn, I still got love for you, but there's a little bit less respect.
And that's it. I think maybe words that needed to be said. Guys like Simmons can catch all the heat, and deservedly so, but they become the poster boys, and people forget sometimes about, situations where guys have been as selfish, disconnected from reality.
Well, like I said, I keep receipts, man. I remember when Dame was at the podium going, I'm a Portland Trailblazer. This is my city. I'm going to be here. Yeah. I keep receipts, man.
He didn't say till I get tired of it. He said till the end, right? He's like, I'm here till the end.
Yeah, and I keep receipts. And it's not just him either. It's Kyrie saying he'd stay in Boston forever. Forever was a short time for Kyrie. I'm sorry, you hit a button. I'm going to try to calm down again.
Yeah, Kyrie is going to be another poster boy for it. Yet they don't get. It's like they continue to fail upwards, right? Because there's so much draw to them and their talent and stuff. They don't have enough. Like, nobody's going to really punish them. Harden is maybe him and Dame might be the two examples that it's like, I don't see a good resolution for any of you guys here. Like, you're all screwed, like both
No,
franchises
but
and both players, you know?
it's different with Dame though, because we love Dame so much.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
different
Harden's
with
not
Dame
that.
because we love Dame so much. See, it's
Mhm.
easy to hate on Harden because we've been hating on Harden forever.
Harden hates himself. It's all part of the game, you know?
With Dame, it's different because we love Dame, or at
Yeah.
least I do. I
Yeah,
can't speak for
man.
the rest of the NBA pod
Hey, if he
world,
ended up
but
in Philly, do they become favorite?
yes.
Okay, that's
As
a
a matter
hot
of fact,
take.
let's do that deal right now. Harden for Dame Lillard. You give me Joel Embiid, Dame Dalla is going to the finals.
Right?
How's that for a take?
Man,
Dame Dollar and Joel Embiid, they're going to the finals.
how would they not do that? You know, like Portland needs to get rid of salary stuff.
And
Match.
let Embiid hurts his knees when Dame is there, they're going to the finals.
Yeah, that is a valid concern, but yes, I would even give up Maxi, what's it, Tobias Harris and
Tobias
Harden
Harris,
for
I
him.
can't believe that guy's still in the league.
No, he's one of the most overpaid guys for sure. But you know, Philly would be able to do it with two guys essentially. Like those two have complementary enough of games. It's like Murray and Jokic. It's lethal. Like that's unstoppable combination of forces. Where I don't know, a lot of these other teams seem to forget how useful that is to have complementary superstars.
I mean, Pippen was a great Robin.
Yeah. What a great example.
Complementary superstars are needed to win titles.
Yeah, and it comes down to a bit of that attitude thing. Like, are you mature enough to be able to get along with another adult that has similar levels of superstardom, right? Like that's maybe an unsung art form that guys like MJ and Pippen were able to negotiate for long enough to do it together.
Here's the question as we near the 50-minute mark in this podcast. I can't believe it's been that long already. Sleepers and floppers. Sleepers and floppers for the
Okay.
last 10 minutes here. Two sleepers,
Okay.
and two floppers.
So we'll
Which
define.
means two teams that you think are going to be on the rise in the NBA, and two teams that everybody's got expectation for that you think might not meet expectations.
Ooh, okay. I like that. I like that. I tell you what, man. My first, can I give you one right off the bat?
You go for it.
I'm going to throw out Houston as a sleeper for two reasons. Two reasons not named Dylan Brooks. I think the combination, because it seems like I keep bringing up maturity as a theme, this podcast and stuff. I think it's undervalued and it continues to show results. So I think when you got Fred VanVleet, two of the most mature, intelligent basketball minds and competitive as F, leading a squad of young, athletic, talented dudes, hungry, got no distractions, are all there for the same thing. We're playing into the maturity, having old heads along with the new heads and a line of command. It's like it's becoming rare in the league. And so I think a team like Houston, if those things suddenly line up and everybody plays according to their role, they're my number one sleeper of just like zero expectations, might end up competing for a playoff spot, if not getting into that play-in tournament, you know?
One of my sleepers, or one of my disappointments, actually, I'll go disappointment first.
Okay.
Is going to be the Atlanta Hawks. I think people have a lot of expectations because of Trey, because of the team they built with Clint Capella and the roster they have. I don't think they're going to meet expectations. I struggle to see Atlanta even making the playoffs. They might get into the play-in, but I don't think they're as highly touted as people might think they are.
Yeah, as much as I'd like to say there's any sort of thing that I'm seeing that's exactly that, but I'm seeing that same thing. And it's like, I wish it would be a different feeling towards Trey of like, hey, maybe he's going to turn a corner and be this like new, mature, really hard type of guy. But you just don't see that. There's no indication of that. And you got to have your best player be a leader. And good, not looking so good on the front.
So what else you got there as your teams to watch or your teams that are going to disappoint?
Okay, I'm going to think of for a disappoint. I think Austin is going to be a pretty nasty disappointment for folks because they had smarts issues last that were bizarre, right? People had different takes on it, but he was so inconsistent, and there was, I think, leadership issues of alphas going back and forth. Like, is it your best player, or is it Marcus Smart that's the alpha that's like, firing people up and telling people how it is and who gets last shot, who's calling the play? They had that all messed up, and so they brought in Porzingis, who's going to ideally just be a role player, but I just don't see it. Like, they're the most oversaturated market, but they've got set like Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, all these superstars finish the same
I'm gonna
spot.
throw a I'm gonna throw an easy disappointment out here. Memphis. Memphis is gonna disappoint a lot of people.
You think,
Without that first 25 games from Ja, the Grizzlies will get off to a slow start, and it'll be hard for them to climb out of that hole.
yeah, they got no heart left, right? They've lost their Dylan Brooks and Ja, their identity.
Yeah, so don't be expecting big things from Memphis this year, in my opinion. I could be wrong, and I'm sure if I am, somebody's gonna go back and play this clip over and over again. But I don't expect much from the Grizz this year.
Yeah, similar to Trey, it's like I'd love it to be otherwise. I'd love to have faith and say, like, yeah, I could see Ja turning a corner and really becoming a different human through this, but there's
But
no
he did it
incentive.
twice in 2 months. In
Yeah,
2 months, he did it twice.
yeah, that's
What do you
it.
can't get into?
That old thing when somebody shows their colors, like they really show you, and it's like, dang, yeah, they've got no interest in really changing that, and that's okay. It's just probably not going to get my vote for a sleeper hit, So I'd agree with that one. And New Orleans falls into that bag for me too. Of huge hopes when I saw Ingram firing on all cylinders and Zion was coming back and all this excitement, and they were off to a great start last season. Zion couldn't keep out of trouble. Ingram has gone off a cliff, as could be seen in the World Cup. Kind of not in a killer mode. Franchise is looking pretty shaky right now to me.
Sleeper for me, Charlotte.
Yeah.
Charlotte's got, I think, some pieces. I think LaMelo, if he stays healthy, can really help this offense, and I think defensively they're going to be all right. So I'm not saying they're going to like set the world on fire, but as far as a team that's been down for a while that could be on the way up, I'm looking at the Charlotte Hornets.
Okay. I'm going to throw another small market East in there just to. I think it'd be again really unlikely to make a ton of noise, but the Indiana Pacers are kind of sneaky still with Halliburton.
They got some tools.
Yeah, they're sort of in that like nobody's worried about them spot, and that's where a lot of development and danger can really happen. But when you got a guy like that can move the ball like that, it's like, oof.
And my other sleeper I've been talking about all podcasts is going to be the Oklahoma City Thunder with Lou Dort and Shea Gilgeous Alexander. I'm still not a believer in Chet, but with those other two guys, I got it. They're going to be fun to watch. That's going to be my other sleeper.
Interesting. Now, I'll put one that, people might say is not a sleeper because it's got huge expectations already. It's the last dance for Steph, in my opinion. He doesn't maybe have a whole another franchise dynasty sort of to build around him, like time-wise left. All the pieces around him are kind of coming to their end with the franchise in a lot of ways. It's legacy time now, just like.
And the Warriors are going to go back to being mediocrely bad.
Yeah, so I think this is one last season where Steph, it's like he's a guy that can go again. He's the MJ level of potential of like if he just wants to win everything, I would be hard not to bet on him.
Well, we can end the podcast right there. Actually, that's a good one to end it on. It's been At the Buzzer. We've been here for almost an hour. Thanks for joining me for this hour-long first edition of the At the Buzzer podcast. G, do you have socials we can find you on?
Not yet, but I'm working on it, and when I get there, I'll be the first one to know.
All right, and we'll be back next week, I'm sure.
Right? Hey, you bet, and we'll see you then.
All right, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. This will probably be posted tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific time because I want to watch it back when I get off work. And thank you for joining me, and we'll see y'all next week. And as I always say to close up my videos, until next time, may your ego come from a place that keeps you humble. I'm Mo Money. Mamba out.
Damn, I got to get something like that. That's really good. May the force be with you. I'll use that for now.